My name is Elizabeth Chanhe Lee. I serve as the Executive for Economic and Environmental Justice at United Methodist Women, and I'm also the Climate Justice Lead. I've been in this capacity for almost 4 years, and before that I was with the General Board of Global Ministries and also at the World Council of Churches doing advocacy at the UN on gender justice, on migration, climate justice as well. And Indigenous people's rights. So it's an honor to be here with you all. I've been a fan of UMW decades before and grateful to be part as a member of UMW and also on staff. I'm currently residing in New Jersey. I'll be going back to New York pretty soon once school starts in earnest for my 6-year-old, pictured there with my spouse. That's Amelia. And we normally reside in occupied Lenape land in Queens, New York. I want to invite you to type. I know Erin said to change or rename yourself, but if you could introduce yourself also in the chat box by your name, where you are joining us from, if you know whose Indigenous land we are on as well, and your affiliation with UMW. If you have a leadership position, what's your connection to UMW, if you're a friend of UMW, all of that will be most welcome. It's great to be here with you all. As we do with UMW, even if we're physically apart and virtually together, we want to remind ourselves of the sisterhood of grace that we participate. So I would invite us as we join in our workshop and session today that we listen actively with head and heart. We speak from our own experience, that we are aware of our body language, respect confidentiality, own our intentions and our impact, practice sustainability, and expect unfinished business, both discomfort and joy. And as we start in our time together, would you join me in prayer? So please join me. Most merciful God, creator of all, one who has created things that are both animate and inanimate, a lover of all, we thank you for your activity in our world, and we join you in grieving for the wildfires and in the destructions that we have been observing all across our world, and in particular in the United States, Oregon, Washington, California, the millions of lives, both humans and non, who have been fleeing and surviving. While the wildfires that have been estimated to be one of the worst and made worse by climate change, global warming, higher temperatures and drier conditions, that at this point has been estimated to lead to $20 billion worth of disaster. For such a time as this, you have invited us to speak, to act, to respond. So would you grant us boldness, that we would not turn away, but that we would see and recognize the call, even when we see grave injustice and such disasters, that you are inviting to partner with you in advancing your justice. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. For those of you who are new with us, each month, for the past few months, we have been organizing monthly calls. They're known as the strategizing and capacity building calls or sessions, where we focus on a particular area around just energy for all, which is one of the campaigns of United Methodist Women. And we meet every third Wednesday of the month, organizing, strategizing, thinking about, well, what does it mean to respond to God's call around just energy? Our next session will be October 21st, 2020. So if you haven't registered, please do so. And for a number of you who feel like, I'm learning a lot, I'm going to learn a lot, but I want to know more specifically about the Just Energy for All campaign and what that entails, well, you're in luck. This November, we will be doing our baseline Just Energy for All 101 webinars. It'll be part one. It'll be focused on why should we care about just energy for all. Part two is what do we mean by just energy for all? And part 3 is how can I respond and be part of advancing just energy for all. So for those of you who have already participated in the event, I invite you to invite other people, and those of you who are curious, please join us, because it will provide a lot of the foundation, and we won't be repeating much of that here. So please do join us. We're also doing it at evening this time because there was a request that not everyone can make it during the day. So we hope that it will be a strong turnout. Our time together today is really focused on writing op-eds and letters to the editor. What does that really mean? And to do that, we wanted to connect it with our Just Energy for All work. We speak about being the need to respond to the climate crisis. We don't do it purely from a scientific or environmental concern. We do that as people of faith and why God calls us to. And those are some of the reasons of the 101 series that we focus on. And we're looking at, because the major cause of climate change and climate crisis is the fossil fuels, the energy that we use, we want to move from fossil fuels to clean, renewable energy. And the goal that we are talking about is 100% renewable energy that is centered on justice and equity. And according to the IPCC report, that means that it needs to be at least 45% renewable energy by 2030 and 100% in 30 years' time compared to 2010 levels, and especially in the electricity and the transportation sector. And we want to center equity and justice in the process because a green economy does not guarantee justice. And as people of faith, we are called to make sure that there is justice and equity. That means that our strategy and practice, we focus on frontline environmental justice, fence line, communities, and we partner with organizations like the NAACP, and we lean on their resources as well. The goal is not to only think about it in the national level, but what does it mean for us in our own context? So we've asked you in your conference, district, and unit, in your state level to see, well, what are those priorities, whether it's legislative advocacy or corporate advocacy, we're working with school systems. We focused on that, and the important thing for us today as we begin this session is to really make the connection about how is our current energy system impacting us? How is it impacting you directly? And think about it in your own context, in your own state. Do you know the state of the air? And those of you who have joined us for various Just Energy for All session, I would invite you to bring out, the research that you've done. What does the American Lung Association say about your state of the air, like mine, around ground level ozone pollution? It's an F, right, in my county. One of 200 counties in the United States that have an F. And how is your current energy, our energy system, whether it's from transportation or the energy that we use, how is it impacting you? And I think about my own father who has COPD, and regularly we must check the ozone, ground level ozone level to see what it is, because it would be unsafe for him to walk outside. Right? And the primary cause of that is he lives in Flushing, Queens, and there are trucks and buses and cars going right across the main road, and that causes major air pollution. That's from fossil fuel. And so I know that connection about my father's health and my health and our community's health because of the energy that we use, just to give one example. Also, just a reminder of the health impacts that it has on women and infants in our communities, whether it's for pregnant women, preterm birth, low infant birth weight, high-risk pregnancy, congenital heart disease for infants as well. So I'm just giving some of that as an example, and think about your own context and how is the energy economy impacting your communities? And you think about that as we learn more about the technical aspects to bring that reality in what you will be writing as well, and the goal of 100% renewable energy that we're looking for. And so I'm going to hand it over shortly to two speakers who will be joining us. We're going to have two parts to our time today. The first part is we're going to be doing some broad training. And actually, Erin Williams will be leading us in that process. And she is a communications and creative professional based in Washington, D.C. She has worked for more than a decade on online, print, and broadcast media, contributing to the Washington Post, NPR, Eater DC, just to name a few. I'm glad she's a foodie. And as a communications professional, she has worked in various arts and cultural spaces, including the Kennedy Center, the National Blues Museum, and TV One. In 2019, she created and produced a podcast in which I talk to artists, where she interviewed women artists about their work and creative process. In her spare time, she enjoys traveling, painting, and visiting museums, and she's actually a native from Alabama. So it's great to have Erin with us, and she'll be leading us into the first portion, which will really be focused on the technical aspects of how to write an op-ed and LTE, what that means. And after that time, so we'll be meeting from now to about 30 for the technical. We invite as many of you to join for more workshopping where you're actually going to be practicing the skills and the information that Erin will be training on. And so Jennifer Farmer will be leading us in that from 4:30 to 5:30. So a number of you should be familiar with Jennifer Farmer. She's been leading United Methodist Women Faith Talk series that happens on a regular basis on Thursday. She's a author, a lecturer, a strategic communications advisor. She's also known as the PR whisperer. And she's the founder of Spotlight PR, where she serves as a strategic communications advisor to a host of grassroots leaders, entrepreneurs, socially conscious celebrities. And she has a lifelong passion for writing and strategic communications. And if you're wondering, like, what book did she write? I want to look at that afterwards. She wrote Extraordinary PR, Ordinary Budget, a Strategy Guide. So I would commend that to you later on to lean into and learn more from. And we'll be having, that's for later. So I'm going to now hand it over to Erin Williams. Erin, we're so glad that you will be equipping us in how we can be writing LTEs and op-eds.
Great. Hi. Thank you for having me. I'm going to share my screen now so you can go and get started. Let's see. Okay. Excuse me 1 second. Give me 1 moment, everybody. Okay, can everybody see that? Yeah, okay, great. Okay. Thank you for that great introduction. Oh, okay. I'm trying to get this to just stop. Okay. So we're just going to start a little bit. If everybody could just kind of share in the chat. Okay, I am sorry. It keeps flashing ahead of. I just wanted to be able to do it automatically, so I apologize for that. So just share, we already talked about, what city you're joining from, but just share a little bit about what you're hoping to learn and if you have or have not ever written an op-ed before. Just take a couple of minutes to share about that. It is a fun, energizing process, if that can even be said, but you will definitely, it's a process where you can get a lot out and really share your internal passionate opinion about why you feel that a certain idea must be or must not be evaluated more. So let's see. Okay, so a lot of people who have not, some have written, some have not written, some have written letters to the editor, things like that, which, and that's good, letters to the editor, and we'll talk about this more, but letters to the editor, they're just kind of like, hey, you wrote this, here's something else that you should consider, things like that, which are also good, at the bottom line, at the end of the day, writing is about expressing yourself in your most unique and honest voice, and that is what is important. So we're going to go to our next slide here. So the outcomes of today's presentation, you'll understand how to draft a persuasive op-ed. You will understand how to submit an op-ed for consideration. You will understand why op-eds are necessary. And you will be better able to distinguish when you should self-publish and when you should have it published on a media platform. So, and by that, you know, we mean, like, do you mean publishing it like in a traditional newspaper, like the New York Times or the Boston Globe or the Los Angeles Times or something like that? Or if it fits somewhere different, like a HuffPost or a Blavity or or the Hill, somewhere like that, just depending on the type of content and what the topic is and who the audience is. Okay. So when it comes to strategic communications, there are a lot of different strategic communications tools that go way beyond just having an op-ed. There's your traditional press release, which, you know, talks about an event that happened and your feelings on it if you're doing that on behalf of a company or an organization. And then you have a press statement if somebody just wants to express this event happened, this is how we feel about it, this law or bill was passed, and here's how our organization wishes that something should have taken place, just getting out one clear statement about it. An op-ed, an editorial board meeting or a memo. That is when you or members of your organization take a seat in front of the editorial board of a company such as the Washington Post or the New York Times or the Baltimore Sun and things like that. And you explain to them in detail about a certain issue or an idea that you have. And you say, this is something that in your paper, in the content of the work that your company produces, this is something that you really need to take into consideration. There's a booking memo, and then there's also visual stories, which is, you know, just basically being on camera or doing a Facebook Live or an Instagram Live or something like that, and just sharing a little more about where you're coming from and what your opinion is. And then obviously today we're going to be talking about op-eds. So the most basic form of an op-ed is a tool to help you share your message, educate your audience, or influence the behavior of your audience and others. We can take one more moment, since I know so many people have been using the chat. If some people, okay, someone started sharing a comment on the New York Times opinions. If everybody could maybe take a moment, if you do read your daily paper, talk about some of the newspapers or organizations that you personally frequent when it comes to reading and evaluating op-eds and opinion pieces. There are so many different platforms today, and I think that's one of the kind of the joys of having the internet and having multiple platforms, is that it doesn't necessarily, things don't have to go through a traditional process, if you will, when it comes to having your opinion shared. You can share what you're thinking, share what you're feeling, and have a large audience wherever you choose to see it. And it seems like all it takes is just one random hit for something to become viral, and then everybody sees it, everybody talks about it, everybody is sharing it. And something that I like to talk to people that I work with, if you feel that it was bad or you feel that it was overblown, the media cycle turns very quickly, as we have all seen, especially this year. So if something didn't necessarily go the way that you wanted to, give it 24, 36, 48 hours, we'll be on to the next thing, and it will just kind of, it will all keep flowing. So, okay, good. We've got a lot of people who read NPR, PBS NewsHour, The New Yorker. Those are very detailed. Capital Times, Washington Post, and then people have local papers like the Albuquerque Journal, the Rochester Post Bulletin, and things like that. So we're going to go to our next slide. So, and we just had you all talk about this. Have you ever written an op-ed, and then what did you learn from the experience? We can give a moment for everyone to kind of share what you learned from that. The main thing that I think that people learn when the people that I work with and working with writing an op-ed, I think the most important thing that people learn is how many words it does or does not take to get your point across. If bottom line, what you were trying to say, you know, let's say, you know, heaven forbid, something happens that is related to gun violence, and you want to say that guns are bad and we should not use them, if that is your opinion. You can bring in a personal story that you want to tell that talks about your experience. You can bring in something that recently happened in the news. But bottom line, you want to keep people's attention, and you want to keep them engaged, and you want to make sure that they're not stumbling over any over elaborations, heaven forbid, any incorrect words, any words that are used improperly, things like that. You want to make sure to keep the flow going. You want to make sure to share a concise point. And ultimately, because often when you submit an op-ed, it goes to the editor. They'll send back, they may or may not send back to you, hey, we wrote this, and I saw that you wrote this, and we added this to it. You want to make sure that it ultimately stays in your voice. Editors do give a lot of gravitas naturally, and that's what they're there for, is to make sure that words come across well in a paper. But if you feel like something is no longer you or no longer what you're saying, you have full vice, if you will, to say, hey, I would never talk that way, or this is not what I'm trying to say. You can always kind of argue that, not argue that back, but you can contend with that, if you will. So, and then people have shared personal stories are vital, writing in first person, things like that. And that is all important, especially if you, you know, some people think that, you know, you can, you know, some people write op-eds in order to really get into the rhythm of writing essays, or maybe writing for future books or things like that. Like it is a great way to start thinking about and churning through ideas in your head that you want to share with the world. So, next slide. So alternate names for opinion, that's the long form of it, obviously, op-ed, opinion editorial, an opinion piece, a guest column, an opinion essay. So it's not necessarily, you know, op-ed in every newspaper, every website, things like that. But if it is put it this way, if it is a long form essay that is trying to illustrate a calculated point, it is an op-ed. So, and what is an op-ed? It runs opposite the editorial section. It runs outside of the publication's perspective. It is a guest perspective, or the perspective of someone who is not on staff with the publication. It is an opinion buttressed by fact, and it is not an editorial. Something that, and some of you who do work in communications may know this, but whenever you see an op-ed that has like a big name tied to it, like if it's Angelina Jolie, or if it's Jennifer Aniston, or if it is Bill Gates or something like that, there is a very strong percentage that they themselves were not the original writers of that. A lot of people usually have ghostwriters, they have communications professionals, they have directors who will go in and say, okay, I know what you're trying to say, let me get some things started for you, and then they will start to put it together, and then they will send it to that person, and that person will say, oh, okay, great, let's put more of this in, let's put more of that in. But I say that to say not to say that someone is inauthentic, but it takes a lot of work to put together a good op-ed, and it can take a lot of time to really say what you want to say. And sometimes people really do want, you know, okay, this is what I'm thinking, can you put this together? And then you can start looking at some stuff, and if someone writes something that is completely what you didn't want to say, you can go and rewrite it and then put it in your own words. So just a little intel anyway. So the difference between a blog and an op-ed: a blog is straight opinion, it is free thought, and it has different journalistic standards. I'm sure that many of us have blogs that we like to follow, that we like to subscribe to. Some of us even, I'm sure, write our own blogs. It is literally, it is a straight up first person vertical, if you will. It is somebody saying, you know, I think that capri pants are over and that we should no longer wear them. It is somebody saying avocado is not the new kale, and this is why. You know, it is ideal, or you know, it can be deeper ideals. I'm just using that as just a thought, but that is what they are. A blog is a free form thought. You don't have to cite any sources. You can say, my sister told me this, my uncle said that, and that is your opinion because that is your platform. And you know, luckily with the invention of and the furthering of writing places on the internet, you know, we can all have our own little corner and we can all say what we like, and that is our place. And then an op-ed is fact-based. It includes statistics, links for reports, or third-party documentation, and it's held to higher journalistic standards. And that's generally because it is being shared on a different platform. It's being shared in the New York Times or an NPR or a Chicago Tribune or somewhere like that. And often, if you are writing an op-ed, you will start talking about, you know, you'll say like 1 in 10 people feel this way, or 45% of people said this, and you will have to cite that in some form. And I have had it happen before where I will send off an op-ed on someone's behalf and they'll say, hey, Erin, we need to know the actual sources of where you pulled these, where you found these, and you have to send them back because a reputable newspaper or publication is not going to publish what you say is fact without having some way to back it up, because that is important. So, and then we've got some links here, editorials, represent the views of the publisher, and then op-eds are guest columns, as we just discussed before. Let me see, we're gonna pull this up, see if we can do that. Hold on one moment. I don't think that I am able to click on this in the moment, so I can share these links in the chat box though. Later, I'll make sure that you all have access to them. So actually, let me see, no, I don't think I am, so. Okay, where are opinion editorials located online? Right here, we are looking at the homepage of the Washington Post. They have their own opinions vertical. Most newspapers do. Some smaller newspapers, they might have it all lumped in together, with general news. If it's something new, it'll all be just on one page. Some places have them on just a completely different site altogether, but it'll link back to whatever that original source was. So where are op-eds located? We see right here, this is the Religion News Service. They have a whole different opinion page. This is right here, we've got Christianity Today. They've got a different page for their op-eds. And then we have Why Are They Important? People sometimes trust non-media representatives before they trust a media source. Op-eds are a great way to share an uncommon perspective on the common issue, and they are a way to share your message in a direct and unfiltered manner. As we have seen, and I'm only sharing this just as general fact, in the past 4 years, a lot of people do trust non-media representatives before they trust a media source. For better or for worse, that can grant you whatever opinion you are choosing to find. But some people want to hear it from someone who is on the ground, who's not a part of a certain organization or establishment, that makes them feel that whatever they are hearing is more authentic and can be understood better in some forms. And as we said, op-eds are a great way to share an uncommon perspective on a common issue. There have been several different perspectives taken. I keep going back to it because it is so relevant on the gun violence debate. There have been people saying, okay, you have African Americans who are getting shot and killed, but what about other minorities that are getting targeted and people are not talking about that? Or you talk about people needing to heal from this. Well, no one's talking about children. No one is talking about the elderly. No one's talking about this. Or this happened in my neighborhood. This is how I handled it. There are so many ways to skin a cat. And, with any common topic, you can keep peeling back the onion and peeling back the onion and peeling back the onion. And it all goes back to the original source, which is great. And they are a way to share your message in a uncommon and unfiltered manner. So how to start your op-ed, that's the most important part. You don't have anything if you don't have content, so we'll go here. So first things first to think about, what hasn't been said in the debate over climate change? What are people missing in the broader debate about fossil fuels, air pollution, renewable energy? What are people getting wrong? What are the solutions? Think about it in the most basic way of what is something that I have been wanting to say, or I have been waiting for somebody else to say that I am not reading. People, they read certain things over and over and they say, they never talk about this one aspect. They never talk about how it impacts this person. They never talk about X, Y, and Z. I would love it if somebody would share about that. That is your opportunity to get in there and to share what you want to put out into the world. That is your moment. How can you expand the argument? What is unique about your perspective, and say that. If other people are saying it, how can you advance the argument? For instance, if you are talking about climate change, or you are talking about the environment or something like that, you might be able to say, I live in the Pacific Northwest and it is X weather today and it shouldn't be this way for another 6 months, and this is how I feel about it. Or I live in a place that has no climate change whatsoever, but I feel moved by seeing certain things that are going on in the world, and this is how I would like to help, or this is how I think that other people can help. So, and just to stop for a second, does anyone have any questions so far, any thoughts or ideas? Please feel free to add them to the chat box, and we can always take a moment to address those. Okay, let me go to the next slide. when you're thinking about this, it's always good to write things down, make a list of your main points or central arguments, make a list of your supporting examples, and make a list of reporters, articles, and videos that you can link to in your essay. As we said, with an op-ed, you have to have some sort of documentation in regards to what you're saying if you're bringing in a certain statistic or fact. Let's see. So, yeah. Okay. What would hold you back from writing an opinion editorial? What distractions do you need to address and clear? Often in people that I've worked with before, some people are afraid to write an op-ed mostly because it will be associated with them. If it has your name on it, that's you saying, I don't talk about X amount thing with my coworkers, but they're going to be able to find this. They're going to be able to link this if I want it published here or published there. And frankly, that is something that you have to take into consideration. I'm sure that many of us have things that are linked to our name on the internet or some other source that we wish would be taken down. We wish that no one knew about, even if that is something that we felt passionately about or deeply about at the time. You don't have to share with everyone that you wrote something. Some people just feel a lot better having gotten the idea or the thought off their chest, or just having the recognition of a publication saying, hey, we like that idea. We want to share with our people, let's do that. So. And then often when it comes to distractions, I know I cannot think of the author who said it, but some people say, I hate writing, but I love having written. So a lot of times it just takes the discipline of sitting down, giving yourself that hour or 2 hours to just get out what they call a vomit draft, which is you just saying all of the words that come to mind at first, going back over that, cleaning it up, bring in whatever statistics or thoughts or links that you need to bring in, and then start again. You can always bring in somebody else to read it over. You can bring in a friend, a loved one, someone like that. They can say, oh, I think this is great, or what about this? And then you can go from there when it comes to the pitching process. So there are 3 possibilities for how op-eds get published. You can write them and submit them to the op-ed of a publication. You can pitch a concept to the editor and wait for their feedback. Or you can write an op-ed at the request of the opinion editor. So in those 1 or 3 ways, in writing and submitting the op-ed to the opinion editor of a publication, some smaller newspapers, if you go to their page and it says, how to find out more about writing an op-ed, they may have just a straight up form on their website, and they'll say post whatever you have here. You'll hear back from us if we're interested within 48, 72 hours. Some people, sometimes I know that when I am pitching op-eds on behalf of others, I will find out whomever the opinion editor is, because in my personal opinion, it is always my thought that whenever you see, like a call us or a large form or something like that, it just gets lost in the void. I feel like sending an email about something just kind of takes it to that next level and saying, hi, John, my name is Erin. I just sent this to you over a form, but I would like to take a moment and send this to you directly. This is 600 words. This is what it's focused on. Please feel free to get back to me. And then, and that's kind of number 2, pitching the concept and waiting for feedback. That can go one of 2 ways. Sometimes if it's a small enough publication, it's easier to just write it whatever you want it to write and send it to them. With a concept, if it just takes you pulling in a couple of more facts and a couple of more quotes to whatever you sent them in the beginning, like here's an example, that's great as well. And then number 3, writing an op-ed at the request of the opinion editor. That often happens if you do have contacts, or if you are close or friendly with the person who is on an op-ed page or something like that. Or if you happen to be on Twitter or on the internet and you'll see them saying, we have a call for pitches, we have a call for op-eds, we'd love to have people respond to this. That can be a prime opportunity for you to pitch your work, pitch your ideas, and get them featured in a publication. So, someone asked, can you post an anonymous op-ed? Sometimes you can. Most larger publications will not allow that. They want it to be tied to a person. Anonymity creates more questions than answers. And when you are trying to write about a topic that is relevant or that is important, they're going to think, well, why should I trust this person if they wouldn't even give me their name? You know, if you are uncomfortable maybe with having your full name out there, you could have your initials, or you could, you know, even do maybe an alliteration of your middle name or something like that. You don't have to, you can make it a little harder, but that name is very important, and it is harder to get your work featured if you don't have a name to put onto it. Also, in posting an anonymous op-ed, this kind of goes into a different topic, but sometimes people will pitch op-eds that have 2, 3, or 4 people on them. If you are interested or thinking about doing that, writing an op-ed that has multiple people with it, that is fine. I would recommend no more than 4 people, because then honestly, it's going to look like, well, how can we figure out, you know, who wrote what? Did somebody write sentence 1 through 3 and someone, you know, wrote more of that? But you know, the more collaboration you can bring in, the better. And the bigger names that you can tie to something, the better, you know. So that's just something to consider. And this is Jennifer. Jennifer is my colleague who will be coming on later on. Basically, ultimately, this is a quote that can be featured in both op-eds and just in general when it comes to kind of building your confidence and wanting to get the word out about your message. You know, look for what distinguishes you from others, and then publicize your uniqueness and your thought leadership. Ultimately, when you do choose to pitch an op-ed and to think about the idea of having something published, you are taking a stand and you are becoming a leader in whatever that thought or idea is. You know, 5, 10 years down the road, you might write something that might, you know, things just live on the internet forever. Somebody could come back and cite you, and it's like, oh my gosh, I wasn't even thinking that someone would think about me that way, you know. How many times have we all read something you see thought leader, you know, attached to it, and it's like, oh, okay, great, you know, so you might be a thought leader and you just don't even know it yet. So, let's see. You can increase the likelihood of getting your op-ed published if you are timely, if you write within 24 hours of a corresponding news story, if you pick a strong news hook, or you offer context. Just in referencing the past events of the summer with the numerous shootings of people such as, you know, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, things like that. How many of us saw the number of thought pieces that were coming out, you know, in the hours, days, and the week after something had happened to these people? Those were able to get published because they were timely. You know, as I just stated earlier, you know, the news cycle turns very quickly. So if there's something that you see that makes you feel a certain way, and you want to share that with somebody else and share your opinion about it, do it sooner than later. You know, if I wanted to write something about the DNC or the RNC, I would have wanted to have written it within that week, no later than 48 or 72 hours after. Me thinking about something that was said by a person now, like literally now today, that would have no relevance. I would need to maybe wait for something to happen again, or I would have to feature it on my own personal platform. You know, it is news. You know, news has got to be of the moment, and it's got to be timed to something. And then often, you know, the reason that people are spurred to write their opinion is because something does happen in the world, or they read something that catches them off guard. So that is the mood, and that is kind of the flow that you want to run with. Telling the public something that they don't already know, following submission guidelines, and including backlinks and supporting documentation to verify claims that are made in the opinion piece. Editors do not know something is true just because you said it. I want to focus on number 2 with following submission guidelines. People, when you are submitting something, you know, I think the number one thing that in working with editors before, the main thing that they want to focus on is the word count. It is easier for them, you know, they'll say, you know, your piece can be over 400, 500, 600 words. They are serious about that. If you send them something and you know that you are not a writer by trade, but you do have something that you want to say, it is much easier to edit within the limit as opposed to 1,000-word piece that won't even get touched. Things move fast. And if a writer or an editor has finally got the time to look at something you wrote and they go, oh, I can already tell this is going to be too long, they're going to move past it. That is the most important thing, is staying within the word count. And often, this is something that I still practice to this day, write something and read it back to yourself. You know, it is very easy to reuse the same word 3, 4, 5 times in one paragraph and not even realize it. That's 3, 4, 5 words that you can delete right there, and you can make your sentences shorter and more concise. I think one word that I'm personally guilty of using is again. You know, we'll say, again, this did not need to happen again. And again, here we are presented again with the same thing. You know, it's like 5 agains. You can take all those out, focus on one, and you can go to your next point. So, and then the third bullet here, including those backlinks and supporting documentation. Things can get held up if you can't prove where you got your topic from. Not your topic, but you got your supporting evidence from. You know, if a writer or an editor gets back to you and says, hi, we can get this published tomorrow, but we're going to need you to point out where these 3 sentences came from, and you don't get back to them within 2 or 3 hours, they might have to move to something else because they have to get things published. Or they may only publish it online and not in print or something like that. Which, you know, frankly, you know, that's, you know, some people still like to see that ink and want to share it with people that way. But frankly, it's easier to just have everything that they say and to go from there. And then, and this might be a smaller thing, but if a editor asks you to send something and they say, you know, put in the subject line for your editorial consideration, that's what they're going to be looking for if they're searching back in their inbox. You know, if you just send to them like op-ed written by Aaron Williams, who is going to know to search for that? If they literally say, please put in for your editorial consideration, they can go back and see everything that was pitched to them within the last 4 or 5 hours and then start reading from there. Mixing opinion with fact and backing up the facts with supporting links. Ultimately, remember that the first word in op-ed is opinion. This is your opinion. So you want to say, you know, I feel like we should do something this way, and here's supporting evidence of it being tried in the past, and this is what I think about it. Just kind of think about creating your flow that way. Say something no one else is saying. Don't just say why something is wrong. State what you're doing to resolve it. Infuse history and avoid self-promotion. There was something, I'm bringing this up because I read this recently. As you all know, there has been a big race in order to get out the vaccine for the coronavirus. And there's been a lot of buzz about that. You know, people will say, oh, it's going to come out in November, so it's going to come out in January. It's not going to come out until 2024. I read an op-ed not too long ago about a disease that was rampant in the late 70s. And then President Gerald Ford tried to rush out a vaccine, and it did not go well. That went back to something that happened. And I don't know, obviously I don't know all of our ages here, but if you weren't alive, then you read it, you can go, oh my gosh, you know, I had no idea. Maybe this is something we should all think about. And then in, you know, self-promotion, obviously your name is going to be tied to whatever you write, but you know, you don't want to say something like, and as I said in my new book, or as I tweeted the other day, or as I referenced on my Facebook post, because it's going to be like, wow, if you're really just going for promotion, then maybe you should stick to the platforms that you're already using. You know, we try to present, you know, strong opinions that everyone can relate to, not just this one person in particular. So, and I also want to just jump in a little on the say something that no one else is saying. You know, obviously there is something that makes us feel spurred to share our opinion and to share what we are thinking. It might be harder to jump on an opinion that you may have read before, but you know, think about the perspective. If you're writing about gun violence, but from the perspective of a mother with 3 small children, if you're writing about climate change, but from the opinion of somebody who drives an RV for a living, things like that, you know, you can see something and want to change it and, you know, think, well, what makes me different? Well, your day-to-day makes you different. You know, obviously no 2 people are writing the same piece. So let's see if we have any. Yes, okay, great. Let's go to our next. And then using a personal narrative and then telling a story ethically and intentionally. And then structuring your essay. So, you know, structure, you get your headline, your opening paragraph, your central message, your context that offers historical perspective, supporting data part 1, supporting data part 2, an anecdote, and a closing paragraph. One thing that I want to say, obviously you want to have your open paragraph and your central message. The context and the supporting data, those can be folded in anywhere within that piece. You know, following the opening and the closing is important, but if you're saying something in your opening paragraph that shines a light on something that is pretty definitive, you're going to, if it's something like in 1923, so-and-so said, you're going to want to have a reference to that. So that's part of your supporting data. And that can also be tied to context that offers historical perspective. When it comes to writing an op-ed, the most important, you don't have to necessarily have 2 parts or 3 parts of supporting data, but you do need to have at least something in there that people know that your opinion or your idea is linked to factual content. And then your headline is very important. Often, I have found that with editors, you can say I've written an editorial about this topic, and here's my essay. A lot of times they will go in and they'll kind of give it the headline that they want because they want their readers to read it. Sometimes we'll say this is what I don't like and this is why. Well, okay, but you want it to have that kind of catchy, punchy, thought-grabbing headline. Literally that op-ed that I was talking about in the New York Times, it literally said, Gerald Ford tried to rush a vaccine, it didn't go well. Well, okay, who's gonna pass that up, especially in experiencing what we're all going through right now. So, and the alternate structure of an op-ed, this is something that is actually, it's small, but it's actually important, stating your opinion clearly, and then stating why you feel your opinion is correct, giving an example that supports your reason above with more details, a reason that you feel that your opinion is correct, an example that supports your reason above with more details, and then restating your opinion with enthusiasm. Also, something that I personally would like to offer, if you personally read like an op-ed columnist on a regular basis and you like what they say and you like how they make their paragraphs and their words flow, use them as an example. Obviously, you wouldn't plagiarize them. You wouldn't want to, take anything that they directly said. But if you like how they structure what they're saying, if you like that they speak in a definitive manner, or if they add a little bit of humor to the words that they're saying, if that resonates with you, there is nothing wrong with using that same flow to make your own work shine. So, how many people, I may just talk about this, how many people can author an op-ed? Most publications prefer 1 signer, some will accept 2. A few signers pick unconventional partners. If the essay will be published in a local publication, ensure that at least 1 signer is from that local community. For instance, if I were going to publish something in the Anniston Star, which is my hometown newspaper, but I was going to have somebody with a broader voice write it, I might tie my name to it, but then I'll tie somebody else's name to it because they're going to go, okay, well, who is this person? And then why would they have any opinion? Oh, this person here is from our city. Oh, okay, great. And it gives them more of an understanding as to why something like that would be in their paper. And then op-ed submission guidelines. These are some general submission guidelines. Some people prefer the signer submit the piece rather than a publicist or a third party. Some people prefer original content that has not been submitted elsewhere. Most publications such as New York Times, Chicago Tribune, things like that, and most newspapers in general, most websites in general will tell you what they're looking for and how they want to submit it. And then some will eschew ableist language. So some people, there are certain things that they won't run, and that's their publication and those are their rules. And if you want to see your work published there, then you will want to do that. Sometimes in submitting op-eds, I generally, when I'm submitting an op-ed for someone or on behalf of someone, I will say that it is exclusive to them for the next 24 hours. That gives me time to let them have had it for a day, let them see it, let them know if they want to pass on it or not. And if they do want to pass, well, I can say, okay, well, I submitted this at 3 o'clock on Tuesday, it's 3 o'clock on Wednesday. Obviously, they didn't want it. I'm going to try publication B. And you can, try 2 or 3 publications. And then if someone gets back to you, if you pitched it on a Monday and they get back to you on a Thursday and they say, hey, we'd like to use your piece, you can let them know, okay, great. Another publication is going to publish it. Feel free to publish it if you like, but I'd like to let you know that somebody else is also going to be using it. And sometimes, depending on the publication, they don't mind sharing it in 2 different places. If if the market is small enough or if the audience is diverse enough. So, and then also, I believe that, sometimes you'll see this if something is run in a McClatchy newspaper or in something like that, you know, a newspaper where things go on the wires. And you'll often see, you know, the same op-ed in Topeka, Kansas that you will see in, Portland, Maine. You know, you'll see things shared like that. So if it fits in a different city, things like that, you know, things can be cross-posted. And then also, you know, in the media landscape that we live in, how many times have we been on a random unrelated website and they will report news or an opinion from another website and they'll say, oh, click here for the story. And then it'll take you to the actual op-ed piece. So, you know, you could have something that you wrote for the New York Times that is featured on, oh gosh, on scarymommy.com. And they'll say, you know, go here for that, and then you'll find it. So things can be shared in multiple ways. Let's see. Let me go from next. Who to contact to get your op-ed published. Pitch the opinion editor or the editorial page editor. You can go through an editorial board meeting, or you can go by the paper's invitation. Editorial board meetings are not, I don't want to say that they are hard to get, but they are not something that you would like to pitch to if this is your first time with an op-ed. Editorial boards are often made up of people whose time is stretched out over multiple platforms, and they are only going to bite at people whose name that they have seen in many places before. So, you know, everyone obviously has high aspirations for the work that they write. But if you are writing an op-ed for the first time and you want to pitch it to the New York Times editorial board, that is great, but maybe try it with another publication first. And then, you know, maybe eventually you'll get to that point where you are pitching to the New York Times editorial board. And then, you know, as I say, you know, pitching the opinion editor or the editorial page editor. If you go on a website and they say, you know, you can put your op-ed in here and it looks like a general form, often you can just go to, you know, like, okay, Asbury Park Press, who is the opinions editor. You can find it, you can find their email address, and then you can, you know, you can submit there, and then you can also send an email here. So. And we're going to begin an exercise here. If you guys would just like to take a moment, if you can get out some paper or things like that, or however you like to write. We're going to take some time, and we're going to say, you know, what isn't being said on Just Energy for all that you want people to know? Where can you go to learn more information? We'd like for you to take the next half hour or so and to start teasing out some ideas. We get an essay on this point. A little later, people are going to share what they wrote and kind of do some collaborating and some feedback. So just take a moment, focus on this idea, and I'll give you all some time.